Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Solid Waste Advisory Commission regular meeting for Wednesday, February 27th. It is now 14 minutes after 4. We'll start with roll call. Indicate if you're present. Mark Nelson. Here. Dave Neal, who is absent. Megan Larson.
Present. Steve
Corey, here. Scott Walters.
Here.
Victoria Madrigal. Quorum, let's see. I'll now call for ex officio members. Councilwoman Genesis Milam.
Here.
And Rochelle Klein of
Here.
Republic Services. Quorum being present, we will go ahead and proceed with business. First is approval of the agenda, which was placed on the chairs before the meeting. Are there any comments or motions?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved as written. Further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from the January 23rd meeting. Are there any comments? Or motions?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes.
Been moved that the minutes be approved as written. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved as written. Are there further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you. First up on our agenda today is a bittersweet item, but community recognition. I'm going to move up to the podium. We are, of course, in transition at this point, but it's pleasant for us to be able to recognize some commissioners that have given extensive service at great benefit to the commission. Andrea Pogue and Carrie Glenn, if you would come up here for a second. And I don't think we would be even close to the sense of professionalism we hope that we're presenting to the community if it weren't for the two of you and the dedication you've given to this commission and your service. And you're going to be missed, but I'm hoping that you're going to be swinging by to keep us informed at various times.
Thank you, Steve.
I know, I just want to take a few minutes. Oh, okay. Because I want you guys back up there too. Come on, get in. No, not on my knees. So I just wanted to say how proud I am of the citizen commissioners. You are ready to be launched. You guys have given so much and stepped up and manned projects and formed programs and represented us, the City of Meridian, in other agency contexts. You're ready. Steve, you are just such a seasoned chair. I'm so thrilled you're going to have the support of a full-time staffer from Public Works. That is exciting. I'm sure you will be hearing from Carrie and I, representing legal and MUBS, as we go down the road. You know, we're both here. Call us anytime. We're public services. I look out here, Brett, I mean, Conrad, we're all friends. We all know each other in this community. We're just a trashy bunch. So let's stay in touch. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the commission, do you have anything to add to this presentation?
Thank you very much for helping me through this far.
Thank you for years of sticking with us.
With that, we'll move on.
Can I add something?
Yes,
I just
please,
want to say,
Rochelle.
without solid waste staff, you guys really carried the torch for the whole city, which is pretty impressive considering the amount of hours you guys put in. Aside from this just was a launching pad for committees outside of here. And aside from your other duties, it was pretty impressive for the last, number of years that you guys have been on the SWAC, that you've managed that, your regular day jobs and all of this, because it's a big job. So we're excited to see staff here in Meridian, and thanks for getting us to this point. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, and with that, we'll move on to old business. First in the old business is Trash or Treasure planning update. Brett Branco, would you come up here and give us an update?
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, for allowing me to come. Dave Miles was going to be here to give you an update. He is actually going to be out of town, so he asked me to fill in for him, letting you know what's going on so far with trying to make this a citywide program. We have currently had 2 physical meetings that have happened here at the city to prepare and execute the program. But we have been very busy communicating via email, trying to keep everyone in loop and letting each other know of the responsibilities for each project that we hold to make this program possible. Again, Dave Miles has been the leader, keeping everyone in line, and has been doing an exceptional job doing it. Rochelle from Republic Services, and Carrie Glenn, Shandy Lamb, and Casey Emery have also put together a flyer, and I have distributed it to you for viewing. They will be mailing it via the Republic Services, their distribution, as well as using it as printouts around the city, as well as such virtual avenues as social media outlets for the city to let people know what the event will be and how to participate. Shandy, with the help of Stephen Holbert and Tom Miller from Republic Services, are also working on creating an interactive map where the residents can sign up and let people know that they are participating. They'll also allow Republic Services to know that there will be bulk items to be picked up at that residence, and it'll allow us to send a mass survey to the participants so that we can get feedback in the end. Scott Walters, he has been working on the video. We did have a snafu on our program software that we had the last few years. We ran out of the subscription to be able to use that. So he's using his creative wit to put together a video for us. So that should be done fairly soon and look very great. Again, to help the residents to see how to participate in this program. Casey and Shandy will be working with the media in the future with releases and letting them know the video outlets of the news releases. And Jody St. Martin, she has contacted the HOAs, letting them know about the events in the future. And I will be working with police, letting them know in the days prior to the event about the existence of the program, letting them know to limit the amount of false theft reports or false trespassing reports. And that's pretty much it, unless anyone else here who's with the subcommittee has anything else further to add.
Members of the commission, do you have any questions on? Thank you, Brett. That's extremely helpful for us to be up to date on what's going on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilwoman.
And Brett, you guys have a thing where you can sign up, where people can sign up and show. Did you mention that, or did I just
Yes.
didn't hear that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I did.
so did you send the link out to the whole commission, or is that just for the subcommittee?
That was only, I believe that was only for the subcommittee because I think she is still working on it.
Okay.
But yeah,
Not ready for the public yet.
definitely send it to the commission before, once it's ready.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Next on the agenda in old business is an update to the commission on Ada County and some activities that they've been doing. Since the last meeting, I guess at the beginning of this year, with the two new commissioners, the Ada County commissioners have been working closely with staff of Ada County to learn the departments, and in particular the solid waste department and the activities that are going on there. They do have a regular staff meeting with the staff of the solid waste division. And I have attended the presentation of those so far this year. One was the day after our last meeting on January 24th, at which point staff presented a strategic management plan and a fund recommendation report. The reports included a request to the county commissioners to approve a single rate for all waste received at the landfill. The obvious ramification of that is that for Meridian residents, there would be a 50% increase of fees charged at the landfill, and for biosolids, it would go up 200%. Nothing that didn't really change too much up until the February meeting on February 21st. In the interim, the county commissioners requested that a cost of services study be performed, and county staff went ahead and acknowledged that request and went ahead and identified that a scope for a request for proposal would be submitted on or about the 22nd of February. I expect that was probably submitted. An RFP will go out, and it is hoped that the successful bidder will be awarded early in April, and then a study report would be delivered in July or August of this year for use in the coming year, which I would translate to be fiscal year 2019. I believe there will be no action on this request until the report is released. In connection with that, the county solid waste department has posted the strategic management plan on their webpage. I will go ahead and make that link available to you to make it a little easier to get to it, to read their report. And with that report, are there any questions? Stay tuned. There will be activities. Okay. With that, we will move on to item 3, commercial glass recycling options for public services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And based on, I know I presented commercial glass last time and was asked to bring back rates. And so in front of you right now, I was waiting on some feedback from Boise City, so I'll have to amend what you have in front of you. But we have, before you, proposed glass pricing for 65-gallon carts, and a business can have 2 of those with once-a-month service. And I think there's a copier tip there. We can go 65-gallon carts, or we can go 10-yard mini roll-offs full of glass. And we were hoping to have something in the middle, a 3-yard glass container offering. We would only be able to offer that up front if we had the support of Boise City, meaning we wouldn't be able to dedicate a truck in Meridian to running a route if we had like just 1 or 2 containers, and then that would pull that truck off route and it wouldn't be very efficient. But you always have to have a starting place. So I just heard back, I was checking my phone, Boise did say that we could do an offset with them. So meaning if we launched with 3-yard pricing and 3-yard containers, and we only had 1 customer, for example, we could add that to a Boise truck, and every like 10th truck, when we have 30 yards, for example, we would take that to the Meridian transfer station. So we could add it to theirs and take it to environmental abrasives, and then when, we could track the yards, and then when we had a full truck of Boise's glass combined with Meridian's, we could take it to Meridian. So we could, it's easy math for us. We blend routes all the time, but they did just come back and say that they'd be willing to support a small container glass route as well in Meridian, so we can come back with that pricing. But before you, is what we're suggesting, taking the glass to Momentum Glass Recycling, similar to the residential glass. And I sent a copy of the glass contract to David for review, but I don't know if Bill, did you happen to see it, or the Momentum Glass Recycling contract?
I have not seen that.
Okay, I'll forward you a copy independently, and just so you have it. So we do have a contract with Momentum Glass in Salt Lake City, and this commercial glass would also be going to them. And I know last time we talked about the timeline for when commercial glass could get possibly started, and the sooner the better for Albertsons. We talked about Albertsons looking at that, and Albertsons actually has a representative here today. This is Megan Durrell, and she oversees solid waste for all of Albertsons stores, and particularly she's based here in Idaho, so she can add to our request here. But they're opening a new store on Fairview and Eagle, is that right? And it's the old Shopco, is that right? Yeah, the old Shopco. So it's going to be very fancy. It's much bigger than the Broadway store, which has a similar setup with a kind of restaurant bar in the top. So they'll have that here, and they'll be generating a lot of glass. If they're anything like the Broadway store, they'll have a lot of glass. So anyway, we went ahead and built containers for them. So we're ready to go at launch at a 10-yard level, or with glass carts. And I know that we talked about the timeline, so I'll turn that back over to you guys for what that might look like on the timeline. But did you want to add anything, Megan?
I would just add that, it's
You have to come up
To get you recorded, yeah.
And if you could state your name for the record, too.
I'm Megan Durrell with Albertsons, and it's a pleasure to be here today. We're very excited for a lot of reasons. The Market Street store that's opening on Fairview on March 9th is a new format store for Boise, or Meridian, actually. But the Boise store is a small format of this one. This is almost 100,000 square feet of local fresh retail, and it includes dining, in-store dining, as well as the bar services. Glass is not a common recyclable material in the state of Idaho, so the fact that we have willingness from our leadership and the local staff and the crews here is great. So we just need the support of Meridian and Republic Services to make it happen. There are 2 motivations for this, of course. It's not a cost savings, really, in the end. Glass typically, carries its own weight. Gotta pick up the tab. You can't let residential carry it for you. But it's a safety issue, too. So we want to keep it out of the trash stream for the safety of our employees, but then also do the right thing and recycle it. In addition to that, we have commingled recycling in the store and available to our customers that visit us. So we're committed to that. We've got this new format, this exciting new style. We want to be different. We want to set ourselves apart from old Albertsons, from our competitors out there. We just really want to step it up and be a showcase store in the Meridian neighborhood.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I know I've not had the opportunity, but I would like to thank Albertsons couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, we asked and were generously provided a number of garbage bags, tote bags that we have been using at the Public Works Expo to go ahead and hand out, and we certainly appreciate what Albertsons has done for us. So, having said that, commissioners, do you have any questions at this moment?
I'm impressed, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for Megan. So are you planning on, and this is just out of curiosity, it has nothing to do with anything, but are you planning on doing glass recycling for your customers in the store, like having glass bins for recycling, or is this just for what you're using at the bar and the restaurant?
It'll be customer facing and behind the bar. So we're going to offer it on both sides of our store.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks.
Wow, that's really good.
That is really cool.
I just said probably not. So,
I just checked the bins today. They're all signed perfectly. So when we're ready, they're ready.
Rochelle, I have a question. Obviously, we've had another tenant of that facility, Vintage
wine shop.
Wine Shop.
Yep.
Have you thought about, do they need to have separate service, or is the mall going to go ahead and work with you on location of the bin, and maybe this is something for the few mall tenants, or is that something to be addressed in the future?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure which mall, where is the wine store? I don't know.
It's around the corner.
Oh, it's in the same as Albertsons?
Yeah, it's like about
Oh.
6 doors down around the corner.
Oh, they're their neighbors, and they're interested in, they had been hauling their glass to Boise, and then Boise asked them to bring it to this drop site. So they've been using this drop site here in Meridian, but I'm sure that they would love to have, maybe you guys can strike up a partnership in that. So I didn't realize they were in the same, they were co-located in the same area. So that might be something that wouldn't be, we can reach out to them and connect them with Megan, and then they can take it from there. So I don't split billing. If this is franchise, I don't think the city splits billing, which makes it, like, that would be a Carrie question. I don't think historically the city has split services and billed, but she just, oh no, there she is, right there. I was trying to protect you here. That would be up to the partners in that. Oh, they don't, okay. Boise doesn't either. So, but we can connect you guys if you want to figure it out.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want to tell Megan. So Eileen was really one of the biggest pushers for us to get glass recycling in Meridian. Now, we've been talking about it for long time. But she started hounding myself and another council member, and we kept bringing it forward into Rochelle, and then they finally found a way. So just, Eileen Dudanaki, I think you say it, she owns the New Vintage Wine Shop. So yeah, get to know her. She'll be probably thrilled to have you guys too as neighbors.
Mr. Chairman, just one comment on this. It looks more expensive, $134 a haul, and the reason for that is this is what's considered a roll-off container, so it is hauled by itself. So it's not dumped on a truck with everybody else's glass. It's a dedicated driver and truck hauling just that container. So it's not, it's just a different level of service than the commercial level of service where you can go and add a bunch of different customers onto one. So that's why the smaller container would be a real value add if we could bring that to Meridian as well. So.
Commissioner?
Far less frequently, I guess, is the upside.
Commissioners, further questions or comments? Bill, correct me if I'm, I believe what we need to do is to have a motion to pass this on to council for their consideration, and then augmented with that with a do pass or a do not pass recommendation.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yeah, because we would need to then amend our fee schedule to reflect this new service.
So,
Chair, and I have just one question then for Rochelle. Momentum Recycling, they have capacity for lots of commercial glass? I mean, there's no bumping up against the limit that we expect.
Absolutely. They can't get enough glass, which is why they're willing to come this direction. So they bought they've partnered with Owens Corning. Owens Corning had a facility in Salt Lake, and they closed it, and then a new competitor of theirs had opened and expanded, and then Owens Corning came back into the market and bought that competitor with a really modern facility. And so that is one of their largest manufacturing sites in the country now. And so they are committed to 30% recycled content in their fiberglass insulation. And so they are reaching farther and farther out. They've got glass recycling all around Salt Lake, but it's not, Salt Lake itself doesn't generate nearly as much glass as we do in this valley, they found. So anyway, they're yeah, maybe, but yeah. So they just generally don't. So this is the other thing is we have a bunker. We have committed to keeping it on a hard surface and without sand and gravel and under 20% contamination, which we're able to do that because we dump it and we just see each load that we dump. So if there is something in there like a cardboard box, we just grab it out. So we pull it out. So we're able to keep it really clean, which is a plus for them too. But no, they actually wanted us to start talking to Nampa to see if we could bring Nampas to the Meridian transfer station and store it there as well, and they could come more frequently to get glass. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, so
okay.
Rochelle, I think.
Yeah.
I think Carrie's prompting a question that I was going to ask,
okay.
which is.
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, yes. We can bill outside of the franchise. So we're talking about adding this as a franchise rate, like in the October, next fiscal year. But that's a really good point. So we have the ability. We're nimble enough to bill this at any time outside of the franchise, and we're happy to do that. So what I put in front of you were rates with the franchise fee inside of it, assuming that, or contained in the rate, assuming that it would be a live franchise rate that the city bills, but we can bill that on our own too. I mean, we would still go in front of council, but that's absolutely an option. And that would get us to the starting line when Albertsons opens.
So again, another point for the motion that would go ahead. It wouldn't have to, obviously, because the decision will have to be by council as to whether it's done inside or outside of the franchise. But if there's a desire to recommend one way or the other to council, that would be appropriate. Members of the commission, further questions or motions?
We're waiting on Mark again.
So would we be recommending that we, or the motion is to recommend to City Council to move forward with commercial recycling with these fee schedule for review? Or what are we asking them to do?
The minimum would be recommending to council to consider a commercial recycling program for Meridian. The next level would be to, in addition to that, whether you felt like it was appropriate to recommend to them that that be done inside or outside of the franchise. And then finally, to make the recommendation with a do pass recommendation or a do not pass recommendation. And that can all be done in one motion or.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I guess maybe somebody could give me some history behind why would you do it outside the franchise? I mean, I understand it's one more thing for the building department to add on, but I don't think it's not like 30,000 households, and it seems that when you have the same service provider, yet two different billing situations, I find that difficult to kind of digest. I think that if it was a different service provider, that would be one thing, But being that it's all Republic, and they're like, do they call us? Do they call them? They're going to call us anyway, and then we're just going to have to tell them to call them. I don't see the point. So is there a good reason to do it that way?
Thank you for that focus. Obviously, we have facilitated grass recycling outside of the franchise, and so that exists. However, glass recycling is within the franchise for residents and such, and so we certainly have precedence either way. So, but I think your point is well taken.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Mylum, Councilwoman Mylum, I just wanted to add the advantage, and maybe we can do both. Like the advantage to outside the franchise is just that it would be quicker to market, like to get it here. But if we're looking at adding the rate in October, you know what I mean? So if it's not going to, if we're looking at them, and generally when we add rates, it's through a whole rate process. We do this whole thing with Carrie's department, and we work, and then we generally don't add rates outside of that process. Do you want to add to that, Carrie?
As far as historically, the outside the process, the grass recycling and the grass and glass were taken outside the franchise agreement rather than it being mandated, because whatever's on your utility bill is typically, it's either on or off. If you don't pay your water bill, all of those services get shut off. So making an optional service tied to whether or not you pay your water bill, that was kind of one of the philosophies that we had in the past of putting it outside the franchise agreement, and the fact that you can on and off it. Well, this month I don't want this can, this month I do want this can, this month I don't want that can, this month I do want that can. To on and off it that easy does put a burden on utility billing staff, because we have to make those changes manually. So especially when considering we have 31,000 accounts and only 209 of them choose to do the glass, or the grass, excuse me. I'm not sure on the glass side, but commercial I think is a totally different animal, because there are less volume of numbers that are going to make that decision. The only other thing, while I'm up here, because we're talking Albertsons at Eagle and Fairview, there's a lot of restaurants over there, so you might want to reach out to them too.
Yeah.
And just, you might even find that you'll fill a truck. You won't have to piggyback with voice.
Right, and that might be true. So we can develop some outreach for the restaurant and bar community.
But that was my 2 cents on the history as to why some things are on the franchise and some things are outside the franchise.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I could see probably similarly, the village probably would do something as a facility, and or including the rest of that property, but Boise Co-op might be heavily involved already. But and then on the third corner with Red Robin and El Giro Gallo and Lucky Fins and such.
You're writing this all down?
Yeah. I could easily see 3 locations very fast, so I'm hoping you're prepared for expansion.
Yeah, well, we're ready for expansion. We just wanted to make sure if we start out with like 5 3-yards, twice a week, or once a week, or even every other week, it would be tough to route that. But so it's good to have a piggyback start. But if we find we can launch with our own dedicated truck and containers, that's better. So we'll definitely get some outreach going.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Bill, I have a question for you. So can we add a rate right now, since we're not anywhere near October? Is it a hard no, or is it something that we can do? We just we try not to?
So, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Councilmember Mylum, we can add a rate. And so there's an advertising process we have to go through to do that. But yeah, we do try to bundle all of those and at one time, based on the annual rate increase. But because this is a different service, and I think like Carrie stated, we can bill these separately from the mandatory franchise requirements. I don't see a problem with that. I mean, it takes a little bit of time with the advertising and the noticing and the hearing part. So that's why I think what I was hearing Rochelle saying was that they would be willing to move forward initially with Republic billing the service until the city could catch up with them. I think that's the only thing I'm not aware we've done that very often. That's the only thing that's a little out of character. If they were going to start billing for a service within the confines of their overall agreement with the city, but not with the approval of the city council, that would be unusual. But to do one-off isn't preferred, but we can do it. That's not a problem. So, long answer to yes, that's okay.
So the public hearing would just be on the one rate that we're adding?
Correct.
Okay. What would be the time frame, the fastest that it could get done?
I think for the council to talk about it, direct it, do the advertising, then have the public hearing is approximately a month. So if we were to add it to, say, next Tuesday's agenda for a discussion, to ask the council if they would like us to proceed forward with the noticing and the public hearing, you could probably I'd have to check with the clerk's office, but I think we could probably have it by the end of March.
Mr. Chair, Councilwoman, Mr. Neri, if I understood Carrie correctly, the residential glass is currently billed outside the franchise, so no, it's.
Grass, right?
Glass too.
Glass is?
Right.
Oh, I didn't, the glass.
So I guess my question / confusion is, do a public hearing for the commercial but not the residential? Wouldn't we want to bundle them together? Would that be confusing?
I think I need
Residential was already done, so
residential was handled, generally it was done, well, gratis by Republic, so there was no need for any approval by council, except for one exception, which was that there is a cost for setting up the pad and yes, and so creating the drop area there, and council graciously went ahead and supplied the financing to go ahead and set up that drop point outside of commission work. So, yeah, we didn't really have to go through this process to set up the residential program, but that's the difference.
So the glass recycling that we do, the residential glass recycling, is billed directly from Republic Services outside the franchise.
And it's not on.
Okay, well, that just confuses everything. That changes it back to,
right.
Seems like.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Councilmember Milo, maybe it's the terminology, and I'm not the expert. The expert got a cup and a plaque and left already. So, but I think what we're talking about is mandatory versus non-mandatory services primarily. And Carrie can correct me because she knows better than I do. But when we're talking about in the franchise, we're talking about mandatory services of trash pickup or of that bills on your utility bill. Subscription services like glass recycling, grass recycling, is billed through Republic because it is a subscription to them, not the city. So I think that's what we're talking about for this commercial recycling, is that it would be a subscription service that a business could adopt or a center could adopt. And like I said, the only thing that caught me off guard with Rochelle's statement was that it sounded like Republic was willing to simply begin that service without the council weighing in on it. And okay.
No, but we would just ask that we could go before council. If SWAC recommended it, then we could go before them and ask, and that would shorten it if they approved it.
Right. Yeah. So what I was thinking we would do is go to city council, ask if this service is available, could be available. We'd like to do that, then process the fee that goes with that. And I'd identify that, and would take approximately a month for the noticing to be done. Okay, good. I thought, wow, that's very different. Well, again, it could have been me. So,
yes.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd be willing to make that motion that we request that City Council add commercial glass as an option that would be billed as a subscription directly through Republic in a manner similar to the residential glass outside of the utility bill.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend to council to consider a commercial glass recycling program outside of the franchise in a direct subscription process. I believe that's all the stuff that needs to be said on that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Sorry.
Councilwoman.
So the price would be less then, right? So the price that you quoted was including franchise fees, so it would be outside of the franchise, which means what, 6% less or so?
5%.
Okay, so it'd be a cost savings to their customers as well.
And then, Mr. Chairman and Bill, will you just let us know when to come before council and ask if this will work?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, would next Tuesday, I don't know if next Tuesday is available. I have to ask the mayor and the council president at our agenda meeting. If it is available, would that work, or would the 12th be better, which is our workshop, just from timing standpoint?
Either one,
Okay.
wherever you have space available.
Okay, I will find out from the mayor and the council president by Friday and then let you know if it'll be either next Tuesday or the following Tuesday, because I don't know what the schedule looks like.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Members of the commission, further comments on the motion that's on the floor? Everyone is comfortable with what we're voting on? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of the motion to recommend to council for consideration of a glass recycling program signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Thank you. We move on to new business. First item is recyclable bicycle planning discussion. Rochelle.
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, we were asked to, well, as an update, we've in the last year given away, over 600 bikes in mostly the Meridian area. So it's been really a successful program, and and two of the big chunks of those, I guess, were through the Parks Department. And the Parks Department did approach us this year to participate in the Unplugged event, and we actually have a conflict with Unplugged, and I want to say it's Public Works. Is it Public Works Week? There's another conflict. I mean, there's a conflict that same day, so I think we are going to support them. Wasn't it? Do you remember what it was?
Trash or treasure.
Oh, it's actually Trash to Treasure. Oh my gosh. Yes, so we could actually participate, but I think other commissioners were concerned about that. But we could participate again. Last year we slimed tires. We slimed hundreds of tires at Kleiner Park. If the commission would like to do that again, we can definitely dedicate time again to be there. And I know McGurdio brought his service truck, and for those of you who were there, it was fantastic. He had his compressor on his truck, and we filled up tires. We had a line for hours of people wanting to slime their tires. You guys remember. It was very busy. It's been successful. We did give away bikes last year. I think we gave another 50 bikes away last year at that event, more youth bikes. Although our need this year, I think the need in the schools is great enough that we would try to stay with smaller bikes for the, my suggestion would be to stay with smaller bikes for the Unplugged event if we wind up doing that event again and giving bikes away. Just because Meridian Middle School and Central Academy and some of the folks here in the library sends us people, and those are mostly adult bikes that bike needs that need to be filled. So I would like to retain those bikes for folks that actually get sent to us from social workers or the police department or things like that. People who get DUIs and lose their licenses come to us also for transportation during the time when they don't have a license. And so it's really nice to be able to have bikes ready when they need them. And even now we get one-off calls regularly from the middle schools and things like that to bring bikes over.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm trying to remember last year. Seems like we had the same conflict because we kind of did a divide and conquer.
Yeah.
And part of us kind of supported the recyclable bicycle. And I think a lot of debate happened throughout that day and shortly after on whether fixing bikes and sliming bikes was in the true form of recycling. And I think
right.
Several of us, and I particularly think it is, because you're avoiding it going. If you're you have a get people moving message out there and people have bikes in their garage that are flat, I think it's right in line with what we're trying to do is get them on the road and people moving, right?
And I think last year, Commissioner Nelson, we had a significant number of people who had a bike in their garage with a flat tire, and that derailed them for like a year. I mean, it was a simple tube swap or slime, and they brought in, you're exactly right, something very simple set them back. So if the goal is to get them up and moving with an existing piece of equipment, it seems like a good investment to me.
Mr. Chair, with respect,
Commissioner, yes.
I think the goal is to keep bikes out of the landfill, so if we draw the line that if I have this flat tire, so I'm just gonna throw my bike away, then yeah, it's a good idea to fix the flat tire, but the genesis of the event, the beginning of the event was that pulling bikes that had already been put into the landfill and getting them into the hands of somebody who needs them, which I really like the focus there. I mean, there are lots of entities in town that are focused on bicycle maintenance and alternative transportation and so forth, and I'm not sure that that's SWAC's wheelhouse.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think that we hit a home run last year. It was our second year of doing it because we, once again, gave bikes away, but it was also a good opportunity to get the word out by saying, hey, come get your bikes signed. Well, I didn't know you guys did that. Well, we don't, but we're giving these bikes away and keeping them out of the landfill. So it was a good opportunity to have that discussion with each and every one of those people that went and then shared it. So I agree with you. The focus is keep it out of the landfill. Let's rehab it and give it away. And one way to get that word out was to have the function of sliming the tires, and we had a good time doing it. So I'm not against it.
I would point out that the weekend of the 5th, there won't be that much that the commissioners can do in relationship with trash or treasure. Leading up to that, that's going to be a very intensive event. So on the 5th, there would not necessarily be a conflict. I would go ahead and point out that we need to go ahead and, well, I think I can take it from Republic that Republic is interested and would like to go ahead and do this. Obviously, Cheryl Caldwell has done yeoman service to go ahead and accomplish this in the past, and with her leaving the commission, it would be very good if someone was to step up and say that they wanted to be the liaison to Republic on this subject. I need someone to fill that position. And indeed, one of the things that we've done in the past is to have a sign-up sheet on the web. So I would need to talk with David when he gets back and ask if he would be willing to pick that up and go ahead and reinstitute that this year to go ahead and have the sign-up process to assist. Having said all of that, commissioners, further comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I did have one comment. It would, I thought it might be a good idea too to tell people who have old bicycles that they're not using anymore that maybe they could bring them to this event, because we bring trailerfuls of bikes down and unload them, and then if people want to come and get a bike or slime a tire and have an old bike that they're getting ready to throw away, we'd be happy to collect them at that event and then take them back and have the volunteers repair them.
That's a good idea.
Drop off, maybe a drop off too at Kleiner. Just a thought.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
I like the idea of including a drop-off. Now we're
Seems
turning
more
this
in the
into
theme of what we do, or in the spirit of
a circle of life on a bicycle program now. And I think
So it's recycle a bicycle life cycle.
must be.
I see a new logo for you, Scott.
I would be willing to be the liaison for Republic. I know I got the next 6 weeks are pretty busy getting ready for another conference, but after that, my schedule frees up leading up to this event. So I said I'd never volunteer again.
And it's really working with the Parks Department for the signups.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering on that. Commissioners, additional comments, questions?
I vote Mark Nelson.
So are you, based on your comments, Rochelle, are you thinking that the signups would be limited to children?
I would recommend young children. You know, the first year we did it, we found when we opened it up to everybody, we had people who, it's hard to judge people's needs, but we had families, some families showed up and they said, oh, we've been waiting for one more bike so we could ride as a family. Or then other people showed up and they said, who wouldn't want a free mountain bike? So it was kind of a mix of people. We're always available to give bikes to people in need. And we sort of reserve them for that. So I don't know, when you're just self-selecting it seems like kids grow through their bikes really quickly, and we get a lot of bikes, now people who've picked up a bike from us just for free bring that bike back when they're ready for the next size. So they're kind of swapping up, and they're good about bringing the other bikes back, and that churn happens more with little bikes. But we can open it up, but then we reduce the inventory for the adult size bikes, which really is 12 and up now is what we're seeing. We could do, I don't know if there's no way to assess need on the parks website. You just self-select in, and also we learned a lot of lessons. We had adults coming from Caldwell and Fruitland, and I don't know if you guys remember that, but we didn't set geographic boundaries or GeoNet meridian. So we were giving bikes. Do you remember that, Carrie? Like in Conrad, to people from Boise and Eagle and just all over the place. So we learned some lessons the first year, and then the next year we said kids only, and then they still we said up to age, I think 12. But then, and so we did have a number of adult bikes because we had 12-year-olds who were 5'10". So we did have adult bikes that were in with the kid bikes, and there were probably, I don't know, do you remember how many there were, you guys? Maybe 10 or so adult bikes that were still in with like the kids. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I guess I was just trying to clarify if that's direction that needs to be provided to Parks and Rec before they do signups, or is that further discussion later? Or
it seems like it'd be good discussion later as we see what the inventory is closer to the event. So come end of March and April, we would, unless you had a situation where you just had a ton of adult bikes, and you don't mind freeing up a dozen or so, that'd be different.
No, we have a lot of kid bikes, and VRT has generously loaned us a huge bus bay on Nampicolo Boulevard, and that's where we keep them all stored. But the schools tend to come back in the spring and ask for bikes in the spring. So we'll have a better idea probably coming into the actual event. We usually know by April what the school needs are.
Okay, well, we can keep that in mind with the youth bike being the preferred. Cool.
Bill, I believe that I probably need to go ahead and mention this to council, that the activity is occurring as long as it's a situation where Republic is working with the Parks Department to have this activity. I guess the question would be, now if Public Works volunteers to go ahead and put on the website the opportunity to have people sign up, now does that cross the boundary where we need to get permission from council?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it's a great question. With kind of our transition that we're talking about and doing, of having a staff member, at some point probably not. That could be handled at the staff level, but right now, and again without Dave here, I think it might be wise to bring it to council. I don't know if Councilmember Milam, she's not here at the moment, had an opinion about that, but when Dave gets back, let me touch base with him and see how do we want to make sure council's aware of what's going on.
Councilwoman, we were just having a conversation about how much involvement we needed to precipitate with the council on Recycle a Bicycle. If it was something more towards Republic working with Parks and Rec to go ahead and have an event, there would be nothing that really needed to be done with council. But on the other hand, if we put on the website the opportunity to sign up, then I probably need to go ahead and present to council and get their concurrence on doing that activity. I think at a minimum, I probably need to come before council and inform them that we're doing it again. Your thoughts?
I mean, they always love to hear about it, and it's certainly a good idea to maybe come to our next workshop, in March and present. I can't imagine you getting any kickback or any reason anybody wouldn't, want you to proceed. You're volunteers, and if that's what you want to do, and it does a good service for the community and for the commission, I can't imagine that anybody would disagree with it. So I wouldn't say that it's even necessary, but it's certainly a good idea. And it's either you put it in your report at the end of the year, this is what we did. Anyway, Bill, what do you think? I don't think it's something that needs permission, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Councilmember Milam, I don't necessarily see it as permission either. I think, like Councilmember Milam said, and maybe if we target the 12th to talk about the glass recycling with an update on the Recyclable Bicycle program, it would sort of connect together. It's just an update on kind of what the commission's doing with the council. I think, maybe they could show the flyer for the trash to treasure, so again, showing what's going on, how things are progressing. I think council always likes to hear that. I don't think there's any pushback, and I don't think really permission's needed. We're not talking about expending city funds. We're talking about a activity. So.
And you could ask for volunteers.
Having facilitated that conversation, two thoughts come to mind. First off, I have not had communicated to me when I am doing the annual report for Solid Waste Advisory Commission. That may come up during this time period too, and maybe another opportunity where I could communicate some of this material.
Didn't you just do it? Really recently?
Believe it or not, it was a year ago.
It seems like it was just like a couple months ago.
Of course, we approved the report. It just hasn't been formally presented to council. There is one thing we would need to go ahead and request approval for. In this last year, we went ahead and released $500 to assist Republic in purchasing supplies like slime. And if we want to go ahead and request that from the Community Recycling Fund, that would need to be brought before council. And so
Mr. Chairman, I think this year Parks said they were going to take it over. I think last year there were complications and I bought all the slime, these big gallon jugs and stuff, and then I turned in the receipts and there were tricks, like I couldn't get reimbursed for sales tax, and I couldn't remember. There were all these things where it turned out to be a different type of investment for me. I wouldn't say a bad investment, but when I bought it, I was not able to get reimbursed for the supplies and the slime and stuff like that. So I think the Parks Department recognized that, because somehow it was split between Parks and SWAC, I think. But so Parks Department said they'd be happy to buy all the supplies this year, and they actually have it budgeted, so we can save our money for something else.
So, Mr. Chairman, I will take it up with Dave, if you don't mind, to see, again, maybe we'll target the 12th. Maybe we could cover all of those bases. Annual report, update on some of the programs, as well as the the glass recycling. Maybe we could shoot all of those for the workshop, and then that way we can kind of cover all of the current doings of this commission.
that works for me. I can easily attend that session and do those activities. So in summary, I believe there's no action we need at this particular point. I do appreciate the report from Republic on Recyclable Bicycle, and definitely appreciate Mark stepping up to be the liaison. And I guess I should say I'm certainly available when you're talking with David to, make it a three-way conversation to make sure that we know what we need to do to help that.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you're interested or if they think the council will be interested, but all the people who receive bikes from us sign a waiver, and a lot of them have authorized us to use their pictures and stuff. It is really neat. I mean, we can't really say too much because most of them are minors, they're in school, but the bikes are it's pretty fun when you get to see these kids with their bikes. And so for those who have parents sign the waiver, or they're 18 and they sign a waiver, we're happy to share some of those stories and photographs with you if you're interested. If you think there's interest at the council level, just
Last year.
I have.
Sure. I'm always interested. I think that it's great. I love seeing the pictures. I think that they were shared. That's what I was thinking. They were shared either at an annual report last year.
But that's
or
totally different So, yeah, I mean, it would be an annual update with different children.
But I think it would be fantastic to include those photos, some photos of kids receiving bikes in the report. We always like pictures, especially of cute kids.
Very good.
At least at me.
Thank you. Further comments on the Recycle a Bicycle at this time? We'll move on to the next item. Western Ada Recreation District and the City of Meridian have come to agreement and have, Fuller Park is being transferred over into the city for, within the Parks Department of the city. And I guess we need to open up the conversation and allow Republic to comment on the fact that certainly you provide us wonderful service for all of our parks, and this would be another location where you would have to pick up trash under the donation program.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's already done. We already worked it out. We met offline and it's all taken care of, and I think it's transferred, right, Carrie? Yep, it's all done, so it's just now part of that. And then we have an ongoing procedure of adding new parks as they come on. So I think we're...
Every park is great.
I think the discussion point that David was wanting to have is the recycling side of it.
Oh.
Because I don't think there's recycling at Fuller Park.
Okay. Oh, and just so everyone knows, Fuller Park's the park across here with the swimming pool. But
That's story park.
It's off of 10 Mile.
Oh, yeah, that's Story. Where's Fuller then? Oh,
It's over off of 10 Mile.
It's 10 Mile. That's right. That's right. So that one doesn't, and that's something, yeah, and David wanted to add it, is that right?
Yes.
Well, no, we wanted to go ahead, well, I don't know. I guess staff brought up the question about whether recycling services should be provided at Fuller, and I said, well, at this particular point, I believe we do recycling services at Settlers Park, and I think a couple more parks. Now, I remember we've had a report on, that has been included in the reports that we've had, our quarterly reports, and there's been limited to no material collected at probably any of the other parks besides Settlers.
I think it was because of contamination.
Especially now with the strict.
And perhaps that's the situation is, yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, maybe, I don't know if everybody, so the current status of Fuller Park is it is still owned by the Western Ada Recreation District. And during this fiscal year, the City of Meridian is the operator of that park. So it's still in ownership of Western Ada, which previously paid for trash services. Rochelle is correct. We have met with the chair and Rochelle and myself and Dave to talk about the transition of that park to becoming a city park. So as of October 1st of this year, that will become a City of Meridian park. So the status of it will change, so the uses and the payments and things, well, the amount that was being paid was pretty minor to begin with, so Republic is willing to simply include that now as one of our city services that they provide for all of city parks, even though this technically is only operated by the city currently. I think you're right. The next question was, do we want to expand the recycling services that we have at some of our other larger regional parks to Fuller Park, either in this fiscal year or next fiscal year when the city owns it? I think that was the question that Dave had, wanted the commission to consider.
So I would state that I think what would be very useful to us is to become educated on how valuable that program has been at the parks where it's currently occurring. So if Republic could maybe refresh us on, whether we're getting usable material.
Sure, and Mr. Chairman, I think Conrad can answer that, but one of the things, I was able to participate with the Mayor's Youth Council on the participatory budgeting event, which was last week. And it was interesting because the kids talked about adding recycling containers downtown, similar to Boise's downtown recycling. And the parks chair, the head of the parks, he was great. And he showed up and he said, if you do this, we want a single beverage can opening and a thin slot. So it looks like maybe flattened cardboard and a drink, like beverage Gatorade or aluminum can only, because he also talked about contamination in the parks and how the park staff actually would get rid of a lot of it because it'd just be full of McDonald's bags and things like that. So we would want to be really specific. And I don't know if you have more information, Conrad, on like quality of the material, but it might be something, if we do it, we'd be just very container specific.
Welcome, Conrad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As far as the quality of recycling in the parks themselves, I don't have good information on that. I can tell you which parks do have a recycling container. And I also know that in 2018, the recycle container at Heroes Park was removed. And I don't know if that, I'm guessing that was because it was never called in. It was on on-call service, will call. And it just maybe was called in once a year. So I just don't think it was utilized. Not that the quality of the recycling is bad, but anytime you have open recycling to the public, you're at risk for higher contamination than you would be at the curb or inside a business. I would suggest maybe getting someone from Parks and Rec, their input on what they see at Fuller Park, and maybe compare that to Kleiner's and Settlers Park, who I know those are established recycling parks.
Members of the commission, do you have any comments or questions on this subject? Certainly, motions would be in order. If there was motions that were wished to be made, one would be possibly recommending that no service would occur. You could recommend that service be extended when it's under our control, or you could, I think, if we want to request information from Parks and Rec and from Republic, that would be very appropriate. So, commissioners.
And Mr. Chair, one other thing you might want to consider is too whether or not we also would like the Parks Commission to weigh in as well on that type of service in the park. So both, and then if this commission and parks were to recommend that service and maybe establishing some sort of practice policy of some sort with the parks on when what types of parks it's appropriate and when it isn't, something to that degree. We love rules, lots of rules. That's how we do it.
Well, Mr. Chair, before making a recommendation whether to put recycling or not put recycling, I would like more information from Parks and their kind of expert opinion. My own casual observation at Kleiner Park is those recycling containers are heavily contaminated. So I don't want to recommend recycling and then what we've really done is made really expensive garbage. So I would want the opinion of Parks and Rec before moving forward either way.
Sounds like the bigger question is how do we educate the public to use the public recycling containers properly?
Maybe that's something we work with Parks on, is maybe a graphic, in addition to like the container opening, maybe we have a graphic of like a bottle, Gatorade bottle and an aluminum can, and that's it. And then you'll get paper, some paper, but I don't know, maybe, but I think Parks would have great feedback with that.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would think, and maybe again, the parks are probably the best resource, but with our neighbor to the east, I mean, they have recycling in their parks. I'm sure they have some outreach on how they do it and how much success they get with that. So there's certainly obviously other ways. We don't have to reinvent it that's being done. So.
Yeah, our neighbor to the east has had an opportunity to have the volunteer efforts of the Public Health Department of Boise State's club on environmental health to provide services for events, various events that they have. They go ahead and use Republic's temporary collection boxes, and they go ahead and collect them and facilitate that situation. So it may be necessary for us to come up with something similar, but I guess I'm kind of hearing as a consensus that we will work with staff to try to invite someone from Parks Department to come over to us and talk to us about what would be helpful, what kind of vision they've got for where this is appropriate, when it's not appropriate.
Mr. Chair. So are you wanting somebody from the Parks Department, or are you wanting the Parks Commission to weigh in on this? We could put it on their agenda and have the discussion and then give a recommendation back to you.
Yeah, thank you. That's very good advice. I imagine that they are equivalent to us, in which case the Parks Commission probably owns the mission. And as a result of that, since we're asking for their vision, it would be appropriate for the Parks Commission.
I mean, it's both. It's hard because it's like it's their wheelhouse. It's also your wheelhouse. But since it is the parks, and you want more of a historical data on what's being done in the parks currently as far as recycling goes, they would probably be the best people to ask. And they will have. So just like you have here, they have staff support at those meetings. So they will have park staff also giving them the information that they need, that they're missing to have the discussion. And I'm also their liaison.
Excellent. So without objection, I will go ahead and work with David when he's back here to ask him if he could go ahead and invite a member of the Parks Commission to go ahead and join us at one of our future commission meetings to go ahead and allow us to have a conversation about what's helpful for parks. If that sounds acceptable to the commission.
Steve?
Yes?
Well, I guess where I thought this was going and what you just said are two maybe a little bit different things. So what I was thinking is this would be on a Parks Commission agenda for them to discuss. Yes, and then maybe bring a recommendation to you. So it wouldn't be like on your next agenda, probably. Well, they meet in 2 weeks. They meet on the second Wednesday. So it could possibly. Anyway, I'm just saying, is that what you want? You want them to discuss it at the commission meeting and then have somebody represent here and.
I think I like where you're going on this. I guess what I'm envisioning is to be invited to go ahead and go to the Parks Commission meeting, the second Wednesday, whatever it is, and go ahead and express to them that we're realizing that we've provided containers for trash at the parks and stuff, but we realize that this is kind of a interface between our two commissions, and that we're thinking that it would be very appropriate to go ahead and find out what their vision is for the parks, if there are some places where the service is appropriate and other places where it's not, and then that would reciprocate, that they maybe could go ahead and present whatever conversation occurred there to us at a future meeting. And I'm thinking that that's something that would be appropriate for me to work with staff, David, to go ahead and see if I could be placed on an agenda for parks at some future time. Does that sound like an appropriate path forward?
It does. It makes a lot of sense to me. The only part that I might be redundant would be if you're at the meeting and they're discussing it, and they make a decision, say, at that meeting, whether or not you present that back to the rest of the commission, or if you have somebody come, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. It's really, I guess, between you and them.
Can you bring it back?
But he'll be there getting all the information.
Yeah, I think that would.
Saying if he's hearing it, the question is, would you? And I don't think that's something you need to decide right now. It's just something to think about, the logistics of how that will work. But certainly, I think that the way to start that would be for you to present. That sounds like a good idea. For you to present get on their agenda, make a ask. Just make sure you know exactly what you're asking them to make a decision on.
So let me restate that. Without objection from the commissioners, I would go ahead and arrange to be on a future Parks Commission agenda to go ahead and present to them our desire to learn their vision for whether recycling services are useful and at which types of park would they like to go ahead and have recycling services. And then a report will come back to the commission, whether it be by myself or by a member of the Parks Commission. But
Good, that was pretty good.
are there any
Or
objections
just
to that?
continuing recycling in parks. I mean,
True.
it could be any or all, and then specific what parks. Yeah.
Good point. Any objections, Commission?
So, Mr. Chairman, I will, what I'll do is, since Dave's out of the office this week, I'll connect with Steve Sidaway, the Parks Director, and see what steps do we do about to do that, because I know they have an agenda-setting meeting that I don't know when that is. I don't know if it's this week or next week. So I'll find out what you need to do, and I'll get in touch with you.
That works excellent for me, and I can support it next month or the following month, depending on what their agenda, how their agenda's been
It is an
filling
evening,
up.
it's a Wednesday evening meeting.
Very good.
Starts about right now.
And Mr. Commissioner, for a couple bullet items for that request, I mean, off the top of my head, I'd be interested in their feedback on the current quality of recycling and their recommendation on a criteria as to what size of park or what type of traffic it makes sense to support and which ones not. That would be interesting to me to know when they trust the public to, maybe we limit the types of recycling to just the types of material that are at a park, like bottles and those sorts of things, and not paper or whatever it might be. But I'd just be interested to learn what their concerns are with this recycling now.
Very good. Additional comments or questions on the subject?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
because we changed what can be recycled in 2018, I think that changes what is recycled at the parks to begin with. So we need to have that conversation somewhere else.
Additional comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll be there probably, so it doesn't matter. But I would just say, to keep in mind, I guess, I mentioned possibly eliminating recycling. I think that would be like a last resort kind of thing. It'd almost be better to see, like Mark said, or whatever, Scott, one of you guys, just to recycle certain things. Even if it's just cans, just aluminum cans, or just cans and soda bottles, and then if that stream is much cleaner than what we're seeing today, maybe we can add recycling in more parks, not just the big regional parks, but maybe all of the parks, if it's working well for just those small, specific items that people might be able to adhere to. Anyway, just a thought. Just a complicating.
That sounds good to me. Commission, it's 5:30. I beg your indulgence. We have one more item on here to do the quarterly report, if you're able. If not, I can release you. If there's no objection, we'll continue on. Okay, so the next item under new business is a quarterly report and measures from Republic Services. Conrad.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I will be brief. I have the reports in hand, and I will hand those out right now.
Okay, I can hand them out for you.
Oh, I got them. My first handful of slides probably spend the majority of the time, and then the rest is pretty status quo. And I'll just flip through that, and my information's on the cover sheet of the report there. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions. This report covers the first quarter of fiscal year 2019. So we are referring to months October, November, December of 2018. And I'll start off with the recap of Recycle to Fall. We saw a 59% increase in set-outs, which was tremendous. That's great. Somehow there's a decrease in cubic yards collected. And now cubic yards are an estimate. It's more of a eyeball test, whereas set outs are actually physically counted by hand and something easier to quantify. But this year we did see that large increase in setups, and also probably had quite a few more people bring in their extra. Instead of maybe putting out 100 leaf bags at the curb, they brought in 80 to the transfer station, because we did provide 2 30-yard roll-offs for leaf-only drop-off, free of charge. And I believe each of them was hauled at least half a dozen times during that season. Rake Up Meridian took place once again, and this year raked up homes, 176 homes of the elderly and physically unable to perform raking up duty themselves. So we had volunteers, actually 53 groups of volunteers get together, and together they raked up 2,700 leaf bags in the community. And again, that was 176 homes, which was about double what we did in 2017. Glass recycling collection began in October of 2018. Pre-pickup, pre-service, the registration for that collected 146 subscribers, or 140 subscribers. And by the end of the quarter, it was up to 176 subscribers. So it continued to add more subscribers through the first quarter of service. We saw 273 set-outs on this once-a-month pickup, and it came out to 3.9 tons for the quarter. There was also public drop site access provided 24/7 at the Meridian Transfer Station, and my office is located there as well. We were hit just about every day with interested customers coming in the front office wanting to get a complimentary green bin for their house to start collecting glass to recycle and bring in and drop. So we saw a lot of use there, and emptied the 3 yard 4 times for a total of 12 yards and 3.5 tons. As we talked about earlier, the glass was accepted in Salt Lake City by Momentum Recycling, and eventually on its way to Owens Corning for fiberglass insulation applications. Program does limit glass to bottles and jars only. No windshields, Pri-X, nothing creative, super creative like that. Traditional bottles and jars. Also available to the public is the hand-in-hand box, which is free recycling for the public, mostly intended for multifamily tenants that don't have access to recycling. And also with the growing economy or growing population, we have a lot of move-in boxes and things that just won't fit in the recycle cart. So that's offered to the public, and it was used more than I've seen in any one quarter, averaging about 4.5 hauls per month, totaling 13 hauls, almost 6 tons, and with the pricing of recycling these days, it didn't amount to a whole lot for the community recycling fund, but over $300 in rebates. Again, 13 hauls. Some years I've seen 13 hauls in a whole year, so that was really surprising and great to see for the hand-in-hand box during the first quarter. So from here on, I'll just kind of breeze through. And curbside recycling tons, we're looking about to be on track as we were in 2018, which we saw a decrease in that year, most because of the changes in what was accepted in recycling. Again, costs are not looking like they're going to bounce up anytime soon, but they haven't been falling drastically either. And there's a look about $86 a ton so far. Again, that's just the first 3 months of the year. It might level up to where it was 2018. I haven't seen anything drastic yet. The pulp and paper index for paper on you can see the 3 lines there comparing foreign, local, and domestic markets. And again, pretty stable the last 6 months. Not fantastic, but we are at zero, maybe a few cents above zero on the paper side. And cardboard, same thing. It's pretty stable the last 6 to 9 months, right around $50 here in the local and domestic market. Household hazardous waste cost looks like a slight increase over the last 2 years, but again, still early in the year, and average monthly cost out program is just over $5,600 a month, and that's about what we've been seeing for the last 5 years or so. Curbside recycling is kind of funny how you can see the drop in recycling and an increase in trash, where you still see the effects of educating the community on what can be recycled, what can't be recycled, and word of mouth, and just seeing a little bit of shift, and hopefully that just means that recycling is getting cleaner. Commercial recycling, we saw tons collected go up by 21%, and I've never seen that on the commercial recycling side in any one quarter. So tremendous to see businesses maybe putting out more boxes. I'm not sure what exactly that was. Participation rate's always in the mid 40%, so it's not like there was a run on commercial signups. Just more businesses using their recycled container. And then we see commercial trash actually took a decrease. I'm not sure I've ever seen that either. Even though accounts went up by 3%, trash tons decreased by 2%. Industrial, we saw an increase in recycling for the last maybe 4 or 5 quarters. I've seen it decrease. So this is the first time I've seen industrial roll-off recycling service increase. And also there's an increase in industrial trash. Transfer station, 3% increase is right along the lines of population growth. Household hazardous waste drop off there at our weekly pickup at the Meridian office. Saw that decrease 12% in visitors and 10% in tons. I don't know if it was the season or what, but we'll see what Q2, 3, and 4 come out. But that was kind of a sizable decrease. I usually don't see it that drastic one way or another. I'm not sure if it's an anomaly, but we'll just kind of watch it. And that's my report.
No, just thank you.
Commissioner Nelson, thank you. Mr. Chair.
Thank you as always. It's very important for us to keep abreast of what's happening in the community, and appreciate the succinctness.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all.
That completes the business that's on our agenda. The next meeting is March 27th. I believe there'll be a lot of these activities that we'll have new reports on, new information on, but if there's any topics which we've managed to overlook, make sure you contact me. I'll make sure that it gets on the agenda. Any comments from any of the commissioners?
March 27th is my son's birthday, so I'll keep you posted. I will probably show up, but we need to leave by a certain time.
I appreciate that. I'll try to hold a little closer to our hour schedule. Given that, I will go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. It is 5:42. Thank you for everything you do for us.
Thank you.